Get ready to unleash your inner legal mastermind and embark on an exhilarating legal adventure. Welcome to the Legal Odyssey podcast, where we dive deep into the world of law and bring you face to face with the sharpest legal minds in America. I am thrilled to be your guide on this wild ride as we uncover the hidden secrets of the legal elite. Welcome, listeners, to another captivating episode of the Legal Odyssey. I am so thrilled to have you join us today as we embark on a journey with Justie Nicol of Colorado Lawyer Team. Justie is a criminal defense attorney, family law attorney, and even animal law attorney. Justie comes to us with an abundance of expertise and is going to help us dig in to expand our knowledge in the legal world. Thank you so much for joining us today, Justie. We are lucky to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's just have you start by telling us a little bit about why you decided to become an attorney.
I always knew I wanted to be an attorney. I think in 5th grade, we had a mock trial many years ago, people. We put the cigarette on trial before the big tobacco trials. So in the entire history of my 5th grade teacher doing this, he was old by that point, it was the first time he did not find the cigarette guilty on all counts, and I was one of 2 defense attorneys that got the cigarette acquitted. I don't know whether that's a claim to fame though, really. But yeah, ever since then, wanted to be a lawyer, knew from very early age I was going to law school.
That is such a fun story. I love that you were like, I got this in just the 5th grade, and you took it on from there. And so I know your firm, the Colorado Lawyer Team, is a general litigation firm, but you have chosen to focus a lot of your career on criminal defense. Besides your 5th grade experience, what kind of made you decide that?
Honestly, I had done a bunch of other things first. I thought I was going to be a tax lawyer coming out of undergrad with an undergrad in accounting. I took one tax law class and went, nope, can't do this. I really enjoy the ability to be creative in litigation, demonstrative exhibits, use of technology. It's probably the number one thing that's helped me run my own firm, but early on, it was criminal defense that really ignited that creativity and the artistic part of my brain more so than the logical side. So storytelling and visual creativity, you don't get that anywhere but in criminal defense.
That is awesome. And what a spin to, the normal day-to-day. Like you said, you started with accounting and that was going to be pretty straightforward every day. But to be able to bring in that artistic side and write the stories and create the picture of what has happened is really cool. It's very apparent through your website and even your social media that you have a very strong passion for animal law. I even saw that you're a published author on the subject and you're a regular teacher in animal law lectures throughout Colorado. So can you briefly talk about the most impactful moment within animal law for you?
Oh, that is a loaded question.
It is.
I have done animal cruelty prosecution. I was one of the few people that did that on a statewide basis when I was a prosecutor in the 18th Judicial District. My elected DA actually called me DA Doolittle because I could tell the difference between a rattlesnake and a bull snake, and I took all the animal cases, and the attorneys who were handling like the James Holmes case would come up to me and they were like, we would rather do another mass shooting case than touch one of your dog cases. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. I do. I think probably the most pivotal moment was, it actually made the news. One of my earliest prosecution cases that kind of ignited this passion was a man who had severely neglected his dog and had no criminal history, but the dog was rescued and saved. And I was not present when it happened, but I got to meet the dog later on. Through the course of the case, the dog actually had so many lingering health issues, and he was older. He did have to be euthanized about a year and a half later, but he had a wonderful 18 months. And I got to be present when we said goodbye, and then I got to take the case to trial and take this guy down. So it was super difficult not to cry while prosecuting the case, and to hear the judge basically say, go to jail, do not pass go, there's not going to be a bond that you can afford, and have him hooked up with handcuffs in front of everybody from the rescue and the foster and everybody else that was there for the trial and sentencing. It was a profound moment, and I actually had co-counsel with me who her job was just to keep me from strangling the public defender or crying during trial. And yeah, I mean, I got justice for an animal that had no hope otherwise, and I got to save his life. So
That is amazing. Amazing because I mean, your passion shines through just listening to you talk about the cases, the animals, and to have somebody that's in the corner of those that can't speak for themselves, right? These animals, they can't stand up for themselves. And so to have an attorney that is so passionate and dedicated to be there to stand up for them is so great to see. And I think it's awesome for our audience to hear that there are people out there that want to help fight for these animals besides, just of course, there's the vets and the shelters and the general bigger associations, but there's the attorneys too that are here to help support that fight. And I love hearing that. In that moment, I can't imagine how impactful because the hairs are standing up on my arms.
it's a combination of animal law and criminal law, which is kind of like my sweet spot. But, on the defense side, it's hard because I get those cases where it's animal cruelty defense, and after COVID, I'm no longer teaching animal control, so I don't have the same conflicts that I had before. So I take a handful of animal cruelty cases that come through the door, and I know exactly what needs to be done to defend them, having taught the other side. So the belief in the system is the piece that, I have to remind myself on those cases, like, the system's here to work. Heaven forbid I taught the officers who investigated this and they didn't do a good job and a case gets thrown out because they didn't do a good job. They're not going to make that same mistake twice, so it's almost a learning thing of me on the other side now. But yeah, I mean, it's the overlap, and there's very few people that do animal cases, and I still do a bunch of work with rescues, and one of my good friends is a vet, and she's starting her own rescue and foster organization, so it's morphed over the years. I think that case was over 10 years ago at this point. So it just happened to be the first one.
Yes, one that really sparked that passion and showed the difference that you can make in that area. And so I love this conversation we're having around animal law and how it crosses over into criminal defense. And that brings us right to our focus of the criminal defense. So as we said, Justie focuses on cases that are criminal defense and animal law crossing over, but also cases that just focus more on criminal defense. So I'd like to dig into and uncover some of your amazing knowledge and experience around really quashing warrants, posting bonds, or even like getting a PR bond. So while this could be really loaded, let's try to start simple. If you have a warrant out for your arrest, how can a criminal defense attorney in Colorado help to navigate through the next steps of the process?
Sure, yeah. So we do this kind of representation. It's called pre-filing representation sometimes, when you're contacted by officers for an interview before the warrant goes active. We can help with stepping in to protect your rights if you've got a request from law enforcement to be interviewed. But after the warrant's already active, there are a couple things we can do based upon the type of case and the jurisdiction, of course. So whether you're talking municipal, county court, or district, which is felony level, you've got different standards. But in terms of really serious cases, felonies and misdemeanors in state court, what you're looking at is probably going to be either an add-on or a motion to quash the warrant. And that means basically we can file a written motion to cancel the warrant and get a court date for you to come back. Sometimes hiring an attorney to address your case as soon as you find out about a warrant is a positive with the judges. It shows you're committed to resolving the case because you've got thousands of dollars on the line, right, with hiring an attorney. Other things like doing an add-on, we go in and we get a bond right there in person the next time that there's an open court date. So we will hand walk somebody through the court system and go with them to argue bond, and potentially even keep them out of custody entirely. So they could get the warrant quashed with the written motion, quashed with an add-on, or a personal recognizance bond, which a lot of people ask what a PR bond is. It's personal recognizance. It can involve a co-signer, but generally it's a promise to appear at all future court dates without the need to post a monetary bond or go through a bondsman. Those are ideal circumstances: quashing the warrant, getting a PR bond, and just getting another court date. In some cases, it's not possible. A lot of our victims' rights cases where there's a crime of violence, domestic violence, there's a victim that has to be consulted before the bond is changed. You can't do an add-on without talking to the victim in advance. And half the time, my job in that situation is getting the victim to come to court to do the DA's job for them. Having been a prosecutor, I know that they have to talk to the victim. And if we show up without the DA having an opportunity to talk to the victim, we're not going to get anything done. My client's going to get remanded. They're going to have to come back in 24 hours for another bond hearing so that the DA has an opportunity to consult with the victim. If I can get involved, bring the victim, have the victim contact the district attorney in advance and coordinate that piece, there is a much higher likelihood that the client doesn't have to spend a night in jail.
So it's very clear that it's a process that could lead down many different paths, right? And so if you don't have an attorney by your side navigating, or the right attorney by your side, navigating through the next steps can get very confusing, cumbersome, difficult, or even lead you down the wrong path. What advice could you give to someone in Colorado that is searching for a criminal defense attorney?
I think the big thing to know in these kinds of cases where you've got a warrant, you're feeling urgency, you're like, oh God, what if I get arrested, right? I'm going to lose my job. Sometimes clients will call and they will leave a message with us at I get calls at 2 a.m. on Saturday night, right? Like bars close and I'm like, oh, I'm getting those calls. We have a receptionist service that takes the call. You'll get an intake with us on Monday. I would caution clients who are calling and talking to their criminal defense attorneys themselves at 2 a.m. in the morning. You're getting what you pay for. It's just that one person. The attorney's answering their own phones. They're answering calls at 2 a.m. They're kind of desperate. They're probably taking a bunch of cases and taking stuff on that they don't have the systems built to serve. Our firm's a little different. We have a receptionist service. We only do scheduled intakes. We set boundaries with our clients and empower them to solve their own problems. Instead of calling me at 2 a.m. when you get arrested, I can't do anything until Monday. You call your best friend and give them the debit card information so you can have them contact a bonds person and get you out of jail on Sunday. I can't get you out of jail on Sunday. Your best friend with your debit card and a bonds person can. So we give them that information early on. Solve your own problems, but also be part of our team, and we'll make sure you have the information to.
I think that's such a good point because you have the experience dealing with so many cases that you've been able to set out that processes and systems that you know will work best for each case, each system. And of course, like you said, you have the intake appointments and you schedule those to have the individual conversations and adjust for each person's needs. But to be able to have that experience on how to go through each case, or you've seen a case like this before, can make a big impact for someone's overall outcome of the case. So if you had to give, which if it is to call your best friend at 2 a.m., then maybe that's it. But if you had to give one piece of advice for someone that is maybe aware that they have an arrest warrant in Colorado, what would that be?
Probably the biggest bit of advice for somebody with an active warrant is to find the right attorney who knows how to get you in and out of court and coordinate all of these external pieces, like getting the victim to talk to the DA and getting an investigator to maybe document the victim's perspective, and then also getting a bondsman and getting somebody who is your point of contact for the bondsman, right? Like all of that is outside a regular criminal defense firm. None of that involves us. It's like herding cats. So you need an attorney who can herd cats, and I'm an animal attorney, so woo! No, I'm just kidding. You need an attorney who can wrangle all of these external pieces and get the best outcome for you and do a little pre-planning. Yeah, that might mean that you have a couple of days where you have an active warrant and you might just have to, some people huddle at home and don't drive their car, right? Like we can coordinate things for a couple of days and we can move pretty quickly. But coordination like that can take some time, and it's best not to make a knee-jerk reaction at 2 a.m. and go and turn yourself in without having consulted with an attorney first.
That is such a good point. And again, because they're going to have so much more knowledge about the law and legal twists and turns than you do yourself, especially at 2 a.m. if you're leaving the bar. Uh, but for the reason of just, it's Friday night. You're going to go and turn yourself in at 2 a.m. Probably not the best choice because you're not you're not talking to anyone.
You're going to sit in jail until Monday morning. Although they did just start 6-day-a-week bond advisements. Still, if you're booked on Saturday morning at 2 a.m. Saturday morning, you're going to sit until Monday. And, there's nothing anybody can do about it a lot of times, especially those cases involving victims. But, yeah, we can get a lot of information. There are times when I can even head off a warrant being filed and convince law enforcement to proceed by summons instead. And tell them, literally, you don't need to arrest my client. I will have him there or her there at court within 24 hours if you give me a summons date.
And it's a lot of the times you've worked with these prosecutors before, right? So they know you. They know when you're coming in with this case that Justie Nicol's coming and she's not.
And it's funny. Honestly, most of the prosecutors that I worked with back in the day are now judges. So I just literally had a case where my client, we had filed a motion to continue. It was granted, but there were conditions. And so then there was a mix-up, and my client had a warrant. And I'm like, no, I am on this case. We got it continued. And I popped into WebEx court. I had my client come with me, and I said, listen, I know this is not a regular add-on. This is a mess up from yesterday. We are here to address it today. I can come in person, but I'm in court in Eastern Colorado, so I can't come in person until tomorrow. I don't want my client to have a warrant for 48 hours. We're getting this done now, within 2 hours of you telling us this was a problem. And the judge turns his camera on, and I was like, hey, I remember when you were hired. This is, as a prosecutor, not as a judge, as a prosecutor. Like, hey. Yeah, so it works in our favor a lot of times to have that network. But it's just, you protect your reputation as an attorney. And even with difficult clients, I'm like, here's the deal. You hired me for a reason. You need to do what I recommend. And a lot of times it's about client control and managing their expectations. There's only so much I can do, but what I do really well.
Well, in your thought process at the time is clean. It's straightforward. Whereas someone that's a victim or is going through this kind of case, they are in an extremely emotional state and extremely, there's so many different things going through your head and what changes are happening in my future and even right now and, all the things that need to be dealt with.
Yeah, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to huddle in my house for 2 days. No, 90% of what I do is, yes, lawyering, but also mental health, managing that for clients and recognizing when it gets too much for me. I'm not a trained therapist. I'm going to make some recommendations. We'll bring social workers into cases to not only just do mitigation packages, but to support the client who is going through crisis. And a lot of times we have partnerships with, what is it called? Family of the Accused, FOTA. They offer therapy and counseling for family members who have, family members who are charged with crimes. It's like their parents and stuff that can get counseling through that group. So that network, like I said, it's not just knowing the judges and knowing the DAs. It's knowing social workers. It's knowing who to call, for a late night bondsman. It's knowing who to get counseling for your parents when you're charged with something that's really horrible. So that network is kind of irreplaceable, and it's what you pay us for.
That is amazing to hear. And I love our audience to hear that because, you know, we talked a little bit about before we jumped on today about how sometimes there's this a common misconception that, you're just dealing with another business when you're going to find an attorney. And sure, every business has to do their business. But listening to you talk, Justie, it's so apparent that you put so much care into each and every case and the entire person for that case. And I just love to hear that and hear that that's out there because that's going to make a huge impact on each person in their struggle, but also all of their surrounding family and everybody that's supporting them. So thank you so much for providing all of this knowledge and expertise and sharing your passion with us for law and criminal defense.
Of course, yeah. And I would say, we have clients that we really love working with, and those are the ones that are like, you made a bad decision, you're not a bad person. And they need to hear that from somebody who's just like, I'm not going to judge you. Trust me, I have heard everything under the sun. Like, I'm not going to judge you. This doesn't make you a bad person. Let's just make sure one bad decision doesn't wreck your entire life.
Exactly. I love that. Such a great point for everybody to hear because anyone can find themselves in a twist that they just weren't expecting.
Everyone knows someone who's gotten a DUI.
Exactly. That is a very common one. So, thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in to this amazing episode of the Legal Odyssey. Remember that this is not legal advice, but it is meant to empower you with knowledge and insights from the sharpest legal minds in America. Join us next time for another captivating exploration of the secrets that'll have you feeling confident in each life change.